Okay, shallow end, shallow end.
All right. I'm right here.
You'll be on TV April 10th, my birthday.
All
My
right.
birthday present, okay? I'll be in away, but that's all right. In Boston, having Boston clam chowder, I guess. How'd you do to me yesterday? You?
Oh, I did get my 100 fly. But
What was the time?
1017.
What's good about it?
Only 14 off my
Oh, baloney. You could talk about 10. I like seconds, not 10. Get over closer, okay? I'm gonna yell at you. Laura, your hunger. What'd you time? 57?
Yeah.
Even Mike could do that. Working hard or are you goofing off? How come that nice colored cap? I was wearing white or yellow, guy. Like a sissy cap. That's right, you're a Dutchman. Go near the pool before I hit you in the eye. What's your next meet? What are you swimming against? You don't know who you swim against? Well, don't blow it. I won't. This is one lane over here. They'll be in 3 lanes, okay?
Okay, anytime.
Hang on, hang on. Go fast freestyle without taking your breath. Okay? 1 lap, yeah, you can. 1 lap or 2 laps? Gotta go faster.
Again?
Yeah, still. Hang on. Water ballet, girls and boys.
You got Kelly. Oh.
Show some guts this time, will you?
2 laps.
Go, yeah, 2 laps. Go fast, will you? Faster. Hang on. Come on, hurry up.
You have to move the girls.
How come it can't go out here 42? What do that? I knew when I was posing the camera, not 2 more, faster. Come on. All right, get tubes on.
I can win this baby.
Yeah, I know. That's why I got 50 states when he swam Olympic Get too much camera work, that's good shape. Pull 4, hurry up, pull 4. Come there.
Okay, Anita?
Yeah.
Okay. Sherm, tell us what kind of background you came from. When you were growing up, did you have any poverty? What was your family like? Were they poor?
Oh yeah, I grew up during Depression, John, and it was from hand to mouth, surviving as far as food's concerned, but we survived.
At what point in your life did you say to yourself, well, this is what I want to do. I want to be a coach. I want to be a swim coach.
Well, it was just by chance, I suppose. I was a flyer during World War II, and towards the end of the war, we weren't doing much flying, so they asked if someone would help in the PE department. I said, gee, I'll help. And they threw me in swimming. And I didn't know much about swimming at all, but we trained the youngsters, and we had little competitive teams, and I had a great coach there who taught me a lot about swimming, and that's where I started. Then I came to Sacramento after the war, and went to the YMCA locally here and do some physical fitness work. And they hired me temporary for a couple of years there, and I coached a swimming team. And
so it really wasn't planned then?
No, it wasn't planned. I enjoyed working with the youngsters, and we had some success. And I thought, oh boy, this is neat. And I was planning to go back to Berkeley, where I was born and raised, and I thought I'd stay here, and I coached the team.
Tell me about the birth of Arden Hills. How did it all start?
Well, as the YMCA, we coached there, and we only swam about an hour and a half a day. And as you made progress, you had to go 2-3 hours a day, and the YMCA couldn't give that much time to a swim team. They had other programs. So we went from there to the Elk Club to Park Terrace, and I said, heck, I want to start my own club. And that was 27 years ago. I figured I'd build my pools, and I could work my own time together, which I started Arden Hills. I bought some land and had solicited a newspaper as well as going door to door and getting people to join a club.
What year was this?
This is 1954. And because we had no pools around here, it was very successful. It took me 3 months to sell a membership.
When did you get your first pool in, actually?
1954.
1954. Yeah. How many pools did you have at that time?
Just one pool.
Just one pool.
And we built another pool in 1962, and we had the National Swim Champions there for women in 1962. That's where I met Howard Cosell, and not Howard Cosell, but Jim McKay and Fleming. We had the Nationals there.
Did you know at the time that you had what it really took to be a great coach? Did you sense it?
No, what's a great coach? It's hard to pin down. I have my favorite coaches. There's a certain quirk in a personality, I guess, or motivation, and I yell, scream. I think my military ability gave me that ability to coach, and that to insist upon punctuality and work hard, and I don't know what makes a coach. There are coaches, there are coaches. I have a great respect for Billy Martin, Bobby Knight, and of course the great John Wooden. Johnny Wooden could coach swimming and be a great coach, and perhaps I could coach baseball and be successful. I don't know.
Now that you've been a coach for years, what, in your opinion, makes a good coach? Well, why do you think you're a good coach?
Well, of course, you have to have the material, and every coach has to have material. You can't. It's a necessity. You bring it out of them. How you bring it out, I yell, scream, bribe, everything, and the combination seems to work. Of course, you have to the parents play a big factor in backing you. You see.
Imagine for a moment that I'm Mark Spitz, and I'm in the pool, I'm working out, and you're yelling, you're screaming at me. You say, do 10 more laps, and I say, well, geez, Sherm, I'm really tired. I really want to quit now. What would you tell me?
You think you're tired, Mark? Get moving before I pop you. Really? That's when I did that when he was young, but when he's older, you have to use different psychology. There's bright kids, and he used various methods, And when Mark was swimming in his last year at Arden Hills for Olympics, I was interested in cameras, and so was he. So we'd say, after workout, we'll go talk about cameras and go someplace, and sort of use psychology and try to get him to go. We're not going to go any place until you finish your laps. Well, that worked with him, you see.
Do you use the same psychology now since, our world has changed the last 10 years?
Well, it's hard to coach these youngsters now because they have so much given to them now, and it's harder. Not just Arden Hills, and most of the coaches in other sports tell them the same thing. Kids are independent, and it's hard, but use summer techniques. When they're younger, you can yell, scream, and choke them to death, but when you get older, you have to use a little different psychology. You have to be a buddy to them, yet again, where to draw the line, you see.
Well, then you don't use the same tactics every time. You use something different.
I try everything possible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
But you're even critical, even like, say, when a Debbie Meyer won a race, you're even critical. Debbie, would come up to you and say, geez, Sherm, I won the race, but yet you were critical and you weren't satisfied.
Well, you can't be satisfied, I don't think. If UCLA's dynasty, when they won by 20 points, heck, win by 30 points. When Debbie broke world records, sometimes she'd flub, miss a few turns, and I'd say, you'd have gone faster had you made those turns. I know in Mark, when he broke the Olympic record and the world record in Munich in '72, he put his arm around me and said, didn't I do well? I said, yeah, pretty good, Mark. You won, but you could have gone faster.
What did he say?
Faster the next day, you see. Pardon?
What was his response?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I could have. Sure you could have, That's why I'm psyching him up for the next race, you see. And he could have done better, in my opinion, you see. You have to make him think positive.
What do you expect? What's the number one thing that you expect out of your swimmers?
Well, I want them to win, of course. And I'll tell them, if I'm working with you and you work hard, you have to win. If you don't, you're letting me down, you see. With my training, if you work like I tell you to, you're going to win. That's motivation, I guess. It's the truth.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, during the time period when you coached Debbie Meyer and Mark Spitz, you had certain points and certain confrontations where you had a hard time motivating them. I'm sure every coach has had that confrontation. What's the hardest confrontation you ever had with Mark and Debbie? Do you recall?
Debbie was pretty easy to coach before the Olympics, and my superstar, Mike Burton, was a great motivator. He motivated a lot of those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And Susie Peterson we had also, and Johnny Ferris, they were great swimmers, and they were, as a unit, they were just tremendous. And Debbie was easy to coach. I'd tell her to do this, and she'd do it. I remember she later, after Olympics, said, I got so mad at Sherm I could have choked him because she was so tired. I said, oh, you think you're tired. But after Olympics, she had won 3 individual gold medals. No one had ever done that before. It's hard to motivate her. Gee, it made a coach out of me, I think. I worked with her. And same with Spitz. Spitz didn't have, wasn't very successful in '68 as far as with Mark, are we?
Yeah. If you talk about Burton being
yeah.
We were talking about Debbie Meyer, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about Mark Spitz and Larry Burton as far as motivation is concerned. Mike Burton.
Yeah. Well, Mark in 1972, before Olympics, he wasn't too sure he wanted to go because the pressure was on him, unbelievable pressure. He hadn't done too well in Mexico City, the young boy, and he matured. And we had a hard time making him, convince him he should go, and all the pressure he's going to win 7 gold medals. And we had to baby him along, and he finally did, and he did a great job. No one's ever equaled that, and no one probably will. And Mike Burton was the same way. He did a tremendous job in '68, and he was a young person, at 22 years old, I guess he was, and he won 2 Olympic gold medals, and coming back and being married and swimming in '72 was hard for him. He had to be a husband and help his wife, and it's hard working out, and it is tough. And that was during Rick DeMont days about his taking that medicine to help him his asthma, and Mike got beat a couple of times by DeMont, because I had to tell him, Mike, that look, Mike, if you took that stuff too, you'd probably do better. I convinced him, and he did a great job. And the outstanding event of the Olympics was Mike, at 26 years old, winning a 1500 for the second time. No one's ever done that.
How was Burton compared to, say, Spitz or Meyer as far as motivation is concerned?
Well, he was self-motivated. He came to Arden Hills, and he was awed by our great swimmers, and he was determined to try to beat those so-called rich bitch kids. He's from North Highlands, and he wanted to show them he could win, and he was self-motivated, and I could tell him, we're going to go 1,000,000 laps, and he'd do it. Mm-hmm. And he proved to the whole world, to me and himself, that with hard work, success will come. From that, Debbie Meyer leached on to him and learned his methods, and Susie Peterson, Johnny Ferris, and Vicki King, and all the great swimmers. Of course, Mark was a distance swimmer originally, then he cut down to sprints and did a great job.
You've had so many world champions. You talk about Spitz, you talk about Meyer, you talk about Burton. How much of the success do you take personally?
Well,
yourself.
First of all, what makes a swimmer or an athlete? You have to have, of course, the swimmer themselves, their potential, what they have. You don't develop swimmers, they're already made, or they got the great ability. It's the parents who completely will help financially, will support them, give up their vacations, and the aunts, the uncles who support them. The bus driver takes them to school, the school principal, the teachers, the type of meets you have, then a coach. All these things make an athlete. No one person. Of course, the big thing comes from the athlete themselves. All these
talking about
motivate
support then.
Pardon?
Talking about support and motivation.
Yeah.
Behind the youngster.
It has to come. Usually, I haven't found many athletes who didn't have the parents' backing are successful, even though they had the potential. Mm-hmm. So take a combination. I think too many times people will, coaches will take all the credit, too much of the credit, and again, not giving enough credit. I always use the expression that, so frequently when parents, the youngsters win, the parents will say, well, it's hereditary, but what they lose is damn coach. Mm-hmm. You see, so it's, hey, it takes 2 to tango, the swimmer and a coach, or the basketball player and a coach.
So it sounds to me like you're, you give credit to yourself, but you also give credit to Mark or Debbie or the parents or the other people.
Combination of everything. Everything. You have to have it. You have to have the material there. You can't
Sure.
do it unless you have the material.
But they couldn't have done it without you.
Well, who knows? Had they gone elsewhere, it might have gone better. Who knows? You see.
But you knew their potential when you first started with them. That's something that you had to know.
Yeah. What impresses me about a youngster, I first watched them swim in a meet, how much guts they have.
Yeah.
How they try to get out of the pool by get there somewhere, they get there first. You have to have the guts.
Are you the same? Do you act the same out at practice as you do during a meet, or say the Olympics when you're standing at poolside? Are you pretty much the same guy?
Yeah, because I keep my emotions aside during Olympics. That's the thing. That's the everything put in one. The Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Super Bowl, the World Series, all wrapped in one. The Olympics, and you keep the pressures inside. And boy, it takes you 6 months to unwind after it.
That was the greatest thrill for you to go to the Olympics? 68,
I think so.
72.
Look at the success we had with the great athletes, and 7 gold medals by Spitz. Isn't that unbelievable?
That's incredible when you think about it.
And Mike's great performance as being an old man, and Debbie's first person to win 3 individual gold medals, and we had Susie Peterson did a great job, and Johnny Ferris did a great job, John Nelson, we had Ellie Daniel. They're great.
What did you think at that time when Spitz got the 7 golds? Could you believe it? I mean,
well, I assumed he was going to get that because when he won 4 individuals at the Olympic trials and 3 relays. Hey, he's going to make it unless he breaks his leg or something, you know. I was confident.
You once told me that you would never coach at a university or for a team. You would rather coach individually. How come?
Well, many reasons. University coaches, they have to buy the swimmers by giving them scholarships. Arden Hills, my coaching there, we take them when they're youngsters, 6, 7 years old. You can see the development. Don't get me wrong, I think the college coaches have to do a great job. There are different problems with college coaches. They have to worry about the drinking problem. They're chasing around with the girls and studying. So Arden Hills, they come there all the time and their parents will back them. When my top swimmer goes home in the evening, wants to sleep at 9 o'clock, the parents lower the TV. When the kids are at college, they don't care. They lower higher, you see. So it's a different problem the coaches have. And, of course, in all due respect to college coaches, we develop these great swimmers, the diamonds. They go to the universities, and they, through normal maturation, they get better, right? And too frequent, the college coaches get all the credit. But the good college coaches know where the youngsters come from. They come from the clubs developed there. It's a fun of doing that, watching kids develop. In university, you have to buy the swimmers. I wouldn't like that. I like to develop my own swimmers. Plus, I'm my own boss at Arden Hills. I do what I want there as far as developing the youngsters.
You know, a lot of coaches nowadays, whether it be at a university or whatever, are criticized a lot by the media and the people and say the school that they're at because they're not doing a good job. Do you think that that's unfair? Do you think that there's something wrong with some of our coaches today? Do you think that they're just not doing the job properly, or do you think part of it is the young kids that are kind of radical these days?
Well, it's harder with the youngsters, like I said before. It's harder to coach, but heck, there are coaches. I can name you 10 or 15 great coaches in swimming. I can name you 10 great coaches in basketball, 10 in football, perhaps. And of course, there are many unsung heroes in the coaching field you never hear of. They develop those kids. Look at this Notre Dame new coach. He's done a great job with these youngsters in high school. Now he's going to Notre Dame, but nevertheless, he has to have the athletes with him. He won't win.
Who do you idolize as a coach?
Well, of course, Johnny Wooden was always my favorite, and I like Don Shula, the football coach, and I think Billy Martin's a heck of a coach.
Why do you like those people?
Well, I don't know. Johnny Wooden has a different technique than I do. He's very soft-spoken, and he got the job done. I yell and scream, and Shula does that, and so does Billy Martin.
Why did you idolize Wooden? Because he was a winner?
Well, I knew him personally. I liked the man. He's a great person, and he was a winner. We all like winners, and he too had to have the athletes, but he brought the athletes into champions. He had that motivation. He would say, "Oh, darn it, my gracious, let's get moving faster. I'll have to bench you." You know, a great technique, and you have to admire the man. You see.
You've been interviewed by some of the most famous sportscasters, sports writers across the world. Which interview, besides Creighton Sanders, was the most inspiring on Sherm Chavoor? Did you enjoy the most?
Well, we've had Howard Cosell, Keith Jackson, and Jim McKay, and Fleming. I think the one I enjoyed most, a fellow I never thought he'd be a sportsman or enthusiast, but he was. That's James Michener. And he interviewed Debbie and Spitz and myself for about 4 hours down in Los Angeles, and something about the man who was so great, I really enjoyed that. They're all great interviews, but well, Hilary Hill Bruin was very inspiring, and John Chancellor and Walter Cronkite, you know, just the fact that they interviewed me, it made me feel pretty good. But I liked Michener. He was unbelievable.
The fact that it took so long to get Sherm Chavoor in the Sacramento Hall of Fame, tell me the story. How come it took so long?
Well, I don't know. The other priors, I guess, they had better athletes, better coaches ahead of me, so I came in later, which is fine.
You didn't mind?
No, heck, look, at my age, and anything like this you enjoy.
How do you look back at the years of Spitz and Meyer now? I know you like to reminisce a lot, don't you, about those years?
Yeah, gee, they were the world's greatest.
Yeah.
And you can't take that away from Arden Hills myself. They were the world's greatest. And I think sometimes in Sacramento haven't really appreciated the fact what unbelievable athletes they were. I could look back years and years now and see they were unbelievable. They were. We had 19 gold medals with all the great swimmers, Burton and Ellie Daniel, Ferris, Peterson, John Nelson. I don't think anything in Sacramento ever happened like that before. Tommy Coney did a great job in weightlifting, and Stanish did a great job in his high jumping. But these goals were...
We were just talking about, the good old glory days with Mark and Debbie and Mike Burton. You like to reminisce about that a lot, don't you?
Oh yeah, those were unbelievable days. I mean, what Mark did, 7 gold medals. Debbie, first person to win 3 individual gold medals. Mike Burton won 2 gold medals in '68, coming back as a so-called old man and winning the 1,500 meters in '72. And Johnny Ferris taking a 3rd in the fly, 3rd in the IM. Susie Pearson, 2 gold medals. John Nelson, the relay gold medal. Ellie Daniel. They're unbelievable athletes. Unbelievable what they did. 19 gold medals they accounted for.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I look back. I mean, what they did was unreal. I don't think Sacramento really appreciates the fact what those youngsters did for Sacramento in their hometown in Carmichael. And it's every time I watch the Olympics and countries brag about getting 3 or 4 gold medals, and our old Sacramento had 19 just in swimming alone, plus Tommy Cohn, of course, in weightlifting got 1 in, I think, 1948. And we've had some good swimmers now. Jeff Float, who last year made the Olympic team, that didn't go, however, and he was a great swimmer. We have...
You're coaching him now.
Yeah, he's going to USC right now, and he comes back in summer. And we have, right now, we have some potentials. Lisa Hazen, whose sister, Karen Hazen, was world champion in 1974 and '75. In fact, she beat Debbie Meyer's records.
Does Lisa have the potential that Karen does?
Yes, oh yes. She's perhaps more so. She's more versatile in the sport. She's a great swimmer. And I have Laura Thomas, a great butterflyer. And we have Tabor, and we have Kim Strau, who's come along real well, and many others. But
could you tell just by looking at a person if that person has the ability to be a good swimmer just by the shape of their body?
No, research has proven that swimming has no body. I've seen baseball players throw overhead, some underhand. It depends on the individual. You can tell. I can tell by how much guts they have. Like I said before, in a pool.
That's the most important
Yeah,
thing.
That's important. How much guts you have. So many kids have great straight stroke and they never get there first, but they kids sometimes with terrible stroke get there by hook or crook. They get there. It's how much intestinal fortitude they develop. They want to put out.
You seem to have a great rapport with young kids. I mean, you're 40-something years older than I am, yet I feel that I could probably become one of your best friends. Why do you have such a great rapport with the younger generation? Have you always had that rapport?
I don't know, I suppose, but I have many people give thousands and thousands of dollars to a charity, which is fine. We need that. I give many hours to charity through youth. So I have faith in our youth. We have to work with youth. They're the ones that are going to develop cures for cancer soon, I hope. They're going to be our great lawyers and our senators in Congress, which we badly need. I believe in our youth. I have children, my own grandchildren, and they keep me young. Believe me, they do. I work with those youngsters, and I feel good all over. I feel I'm one of them. And you have to have that and survive to be over 100 years old.
How old do you feel?
Oh, 35.
And you're how old?
I'm not going to tell you.
I knew you were.
Pretty old.
I know you're older than I am.
By about 40 years, as you said.
Why don't you quit coaching? I mean, why keep going on? I mean, you've done everything. You've seen everything across the world. You've probably done a lot more things than some people even dream of doing. Well, that's maybe true, but like I said, I have to work with youth. I'm depending upon them to help our great society, and it's fun. When it's not fun, I'll quit. But see me 30 years from now, maybe I'll decide then. You're just going to, how long are you going to keep going?
Another 30 years at least. Why not? Keep me young.
Mm-hmm. Than to coach, huh? I mean, it just comes natural to you.
It's a labor love.
Yeah.
I spent many hours in the club with the youngsters. It's a labor love. Of course, you have your second thought. Well, holy smoke, what am I doing coaching these dinglings? But the dinglings are fun, you know. Different personalities. It's a circus every day. You see, different personalities, different things. It's a circus every day. I'd have to enjoy it. I wouldn't be doing it.
Getting back to a moment, you mentioned that Sacramento doesn't really appreciate some of the things that swimming has really done with the 19 gold medals. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I don't mean to be critical of Sacramento. I don't think so many people that are more oriented with baseball, football, the sports that really pay off, but swimming, tennis, and those other so-called minor sports are unbelievable. They help win many Olympics because they're particularly swimming. People are football-minded, basketball, baseball, and track more than swimming, yet swimming is one great sport.
What do you think of that dumb shit mayor we got? Sherm, what do you think about the '84 Olympics? Do you think that the Russians should come to Los Angeles and compete, since we boycotted the '80 Olympic Games?
Well, I had mixed feelings. I was like a yo-yo up and down as far as the boycott in 1980. At the time, I agreed with the President Carter that until the Russians clean up their act, that we shouldn't go. And since then, I've had second thoughts. The Russians are still in Afghanistan. We haven't done anything about it. The boycotting Olympics didn't help anything. Yet again, I feel that Russians are still pushing people around, killing and slaughtering, which is wrong. Why should we invite them to our Olympics? They haven't cleaned up their act, have they?
Do we have a right to tell them no, do you think?
We can't, as the Olympic rules state, we have to invite them. Olympic Committee rule says also that if a nation's at war, they can't participate. Well, we were so-called at war at Vietnam, and we participated in 68 Olympics. And the Russians are moved in Hungary in 56 and 68, and other places, Czechoslovakia and Afghanistan, but it's not really a war, is it? So we're to blame also. But my personal feeling, leaving politics out of it, why should we invite them? They haven't cleaned up their act.
How do you keep politics out of the Olympics?
You can't. Politics is in everything. You hear it, Arden Hill, we have politics. I'm sure in Channel 3 they have politics. Every establishment has politics. In the Olympics, there's even more so. Mm-hmm. The people want to prove that their type of government is best by their supremacy in athletics. Hitler's regime tried to prove it that way, and we have to too. God damn the fucking Russians, they just slaughtered through the hell, because, you know.
They were really upset with us. They were really pushed out of shape because we didn't show up. Because if we're not there, you know, they consider themselves the best next to us, okay? And if we're not there, they can't show us up.
Well,
that's really what brought them.
I spoke to them.
Oh, yeah, he took a couple of my Betamax film, you know, the other fellow. He bring it back to me. Yeah, I gave him a blind ticket. Don't let him never even do it. You had that I got for you, the video. You wanted more? I'll give him another one. You could probably. I'll switch it and just switch it and get sleep.
Level? I think it's on. Is it pretty level?
Yeah.
You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Mark, I want to ask you first of all about Sherm Chavoor and what kind of an influence he had on you during 1972 and since that time.
Well, Sherm had a major influence on my career. One, I swam with Sherm when I was about 10 years old, 10, 11, for 2 years. Back then, of course, 1960, 61, 62, we had totally a different philosophy of training. We trained only about 3 times a week for 45 minutes. It took me about 15 of those just to get in the pool. But later on, when I went back to Sherm, through some mishaps because of the my coaching with George Haynes at the Santa Clara Swim Club, he had a major influence, and the primary influence was the fact that he kept me in the water for so many years. As far as the last 2 years of my career, he was able to coerce me to the swimming pool for workouts, which was really difficult because I'd been swimming now at that point in time for about 10 years, and I'd been on the world scene for about 4 or 5 of those as a world record holder, and I'd already been to an Olympic game. So the enthusiasm to go to one more swimming meet or to break one more world record was really difficult, even though I hadn't won an individual gold in the Olympics, which really was the bottom line of why I decided at the last moment to get in and swim for the Olympic Games in '72, because I was really going to go to dental school. Because I was already starting 3.5 weeks late had I chose to go to the Olympics, which I did. I went to the Olympics, never did go back to dental school.
How much of the success would you, or how much of the credit, as far as success is concerned, your success, would you give to Sherm?
I think Sherm was a major credit as far as my involvement with maintaining my mental atmosphere and outlook on just being a competitor for the last 2 or 3 years of my career.
But he was more than just a coach to you, wasn't he, Mark?
Oh, definitely. He was a friend. We had interest in stereo equipment, camera equipment, cars, etc. Only he could afford all of those things, and I couldn't. Later on, I was lucky enough to be able to compete with him after the games. But he was just a great guy. I mean, there were times when he would come and get me. My sister would go to work out without me, and then he'd send the swimmers off on some particular distance, and he'd drive 20 minutes back to my house and say, "Come on, you dirty nut, come on, you nut." Everything was a nut, If he didn't call you a nut, he didn't like you. So, we'd drive back and we'd talk. I'd get in a swim the last 20 or 30 minutes of the workout. But it was that sort of babysitting that really helped me, because it was difficult. It's hard to explain, or one can imagine what it's like, but you find it very difficult to get up and do the same thing over and over again, especially there's no money in the sport. And like I had mentioned earlier, I've been on top for that many years, and to do it one more time might have been a cop-out or an excuse that maybe if I would have gone to the Olympics I wouldn't have done as well as I thought. But of course I went, and I was lucky.
Even Sherm was telling me that he thinks that he's probably a lot more well-known and maybe more respected outside of Sacramento than he is in Sacramento. Why do you think that is?
I think that on the world scene, as far as his expertise in coaching champions such as Debbie Meyer and Mike Burton and myself, that swimming and amateur sports is probably more well-known out of the United States. I think that he's probably more well-known in Sacramento than he would be in Los Angeles, that's for sure. So I would say, though, but to the extent of his notoriety in the world scene, he's probably a much bigger hero in Europe or in South America or Japan, because sports are viewed a little bit differently. They don't have as many professional sports, and those athletes who are either in professional sports or amateur sports are highly looked upon in the eyes of their countrymen and the likes of other people. They find, at least I have found anyway, that in the United States we have so many professional sports and such high-ticketed athletes as far as what they earn per year, that to be an Olympic swimmer or to be an Olympic track and field star is almost meaningless, except for at that particular instant in time. And in 1984 in Los Angeles, you're going to find a tremendous amount of interest in our athletes, quote, us being, an American and all that sort of stuff, just like the hostages. All of a sudden we were all excited about being an American, but that's all already died out and it's yesterday's news. And that's just the nature of being an American. I mean, we find a celebrity, we make them somebody, and then pretty soon we decide that, well, they're not needed anymore and there's a new face in the crowd, and let's go after that.
Would you say that Sherm Chavoor is probably somewhere in the top 10, maybe even top 5 as far as top swimming coaches in the world?
I think that from 1964 to 1972, in that 8-year period, he was probably one of the top 3 in the world, most definitely. I think today, though, there's a lot of outstanding coaches who have come up in the world scene who have been able to recruit the talent. I think that's indicative of one's interest in the sport. I think that Sherm has coached enough champions and he's been to the top enough times, and at his particular age at this point in time, I think that the desire to go out and try to recruit a particular type of talent and coach is really difficult, especially since where it's happening now in swimming comes from the collegiate scene. He's not set up for that. He's not a coach of a college. He's a coach of a country club. And a lot of these coaches at college run a summer program, and therefore those athletes, when they're not swimming during the school year, they stay at the university or wherever to be coached under the tutelage of the particular coach that I have in mind, or coaches for that matter. Mm-hmm. So I think that Sherm has it a little bit more difficult as far as being able to recruit that type of a caliber of swimmer. I was always subjected to the possibility of swimming with Doc Councilman at Indiana University in the summer program, but I decided to go back to my family, and ironically, where my family lived was where Sherm was, and the coaching was there. And I think that anybody who is going to succeed in life has to be exposed to the proper coach. So if going away from college and back home is to a mediocre coach, the athlete isn't going to do that. So I find that Sherm would have a difficult time trying to produce an Olympic swimmer. Jeff Float, for an example, is a very good swimmer from Sacramento, and he goes...
Okay.
Well, for an example, Jeff swims with Sherm in the summer months, but he also could swim with Peter Dalen at Southern Cal if he wanted to, and still be in a good program, just as good as possibly Sherm would offer Jeff. So Sherm really maintains his swimmers from the age group. If they go off to college, of course, they'd come back to him. I don't really think that he's actively wanting to be an Olympic coach again, or wanting really to produce an Olympic champion. It's a full-time commitment. If the talent happens to be there, he would certainly be able to draw and bring that out within the athlete. But look, I was one of 2 million swimmers in the United States in 1972, and I was the only one that won all those medals. So, what's the odds of a coach getting an Olympic caliber swimmer is really, really, in realistic terms, highly unlikely to ever happen.
Mark, in your opinion, you're good friends with Sherm, you've known him a long time. What would you say is the key ingredient as to what makes Sherm a great coach, which he is right now?
I think his ability to be able to communicate with the athlete, his ability to be able to recognize that how he coached Mark Spitz is not going to be how he has to coach the next person. He is able to adapt to that athlete's needs and desires. He is certainly up on what it takes to become a champion. He's produced champions. He's maintained champions, which is probably more difficult than producing them. And he's able to understand the scheme of how to participate in Olympic Games. And what I mean by that is that the Olympic Games is run like no other athletic event in the world. And the pressures and the esprit de corps of the way you have to move around within the Olympic Village and what you can and can't do, and your whole schedule is totally different than anything that has ever been simulated in the United States under any sort of athletic competition. And he has that experience of knowing what it's like to be there, and he can relate that to the athlete, because you can have a great athlete and go to the Olympics and blow it. Point in case, I did in '68. And even though some of the coaches had been to the Olympic Games before, my coach at the time was George Haynes. He was the Olympic coach in 1960 in Rome for women. He was the Olympic coach in 1964 in Tokyo. And now going into the third Olympics in 1968, he couldn't relate any of that to me or any of his swimmers for that matter. And most of the swimmers that swam for George at Santa Clara didn't do well in 1968.
Would you describe Sherm as a tough coach, a real hard-nosed slave driver type, yell at him all the time, this type of guy?
Yeah. I think he's like that, but I think his bark is bigger than his bite.
How did he handle you? I mean, if you didn't want to practice one day, what would he say to you, and what would you say to him? Did you ever get into any type of confrontations with him?
Not really confrontations, but I'd just say that I thought he was crazy, and he'd say, well, let's go out and look at some cameras or whatever today. Mm-hmm. And he'd distract me by doing something else that he knew I enjoyed, at least enabling me to have my mind in the workout and train properly when I was there. If I came to a workout and wasn't really going to put the time or the effort in, then why even show up? That was my attitude. I think when you're 12 years old, of course, it's really difficult to exert your individuality and tell a coach, well, I think this and I think that. But I think that, the ability to be able to maintain a champion or produce a champion is also the ability to be able to cope with that person on an individual basis, being able to handle his problems. I mean, everybody's got a problem. I mean, just because you're at workout doesn't mean you're thinking about training. There's school, there's boyfriends, girlfriends, pressures at home, pressures about what you're going to be when you grow up, pressures about the competition you're training for or whatever. And so he's got that ability to be able to handle all of that sort of atmosphere that surrounds an athlete. And not only he was able to come to the pool, he's got his problems as well and never really let that interfere with his coaching. I never felt that I was being robbed of his attention because of things that were outside problems. He's a pretty successful businessman in his own right, and I think that the pressures of business were not as such as, say, maybe another coach or something like this. So he could afford to take the time and the effort and the love and put the love into the sport that he had and he still has.
I guess what you're saying is a man's got charisma. He knows what the hell he's doing.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like a teacher says the same words that on a particular mathematics class, and then they go to give a test, and the 36 students, they all have 36 different grades. I mean, why is it that everybody heard the same thing, but their absorption level was totally different? And he has that ability to be able to make sure that everybody within that pool absorbs the maximum, and he makes damn sure that it happens. In theory, that would mean that he should have 36 champions if he had 36 pupils, but everybody might absorb everything that he has to say or absorb everything out of his workout in the physical sense. But it's the ability to be able to regurgitate all of that right at the point of when the gun goes off in any particular event. And that is something that I had an innate ability to be able to do. I was never afraid to subject myself to a loss or withdraw all of the talent I had, even at the expense of losing. I could look myself in the face and say, well, that's all I had. A lot of people like to just reserve 5% as an excuse.
Debbie, I want to ask you first of all, what kind of an influence Sherm had you at the time that you were competing in the Olympics in '68, and how did it carry over to your life now, the way you're living life now?
Well, I think in '68, I looked to Sherm as a father figure, also as a coach and a teacher, and as a professional in the sport that I was in. He was the pro and I was the rookie, and he has taught me so many things I couldn't begin to list. I mean, they're just all ready to come out right now. And he's taught me to love life, to love sports, and to enjoy everything and do the best that I can.
Did he teach you how to win?
No. That's really a hard question. I have 3 brothers, and growing up with them, I had to survive with them. I think what he did is he taught me and showed me that I had some potential, and he showed me how to work to achieve success and use the potential to the fullest.
You mentioned before that you believed that you, number one, had the natural talent. You were talking about Mark Spitz, too, having a lot of natural talent. How much of the credit would you give Sherm as far as being the success behind you and behind Mark? How much success do you give him, or how much credit do you give him?
I give him about 99% of the credit. I really do. I had the natural talent, but you also need to have the self-confidence that goes with it. And with Sherm's psychology background, he showed me how to do it, and he showed me how to use the self-confidence, and it has carried over into my life now because the promotion public relations work that I'm doing, I have got to go out and meet people, be on TV, this, that, and the other. And I don't think I'd ever have been able to do it if Sherm hadn't taught me about self-confidence.
I was just going to ask you that. Could you have won without Sherm?
I don't know. I really don't. A lot of people have said, well, would you have swum for someone else? And I've always thought, no, because I think they would have been too lenient after coming from Sherm's program. Everybody says, oh, he's a gruff man, he's a Simon Legree, this, that, and the other. But he's going to kill me, but he's got a heart of gold. And he's probably going, what's she telling people that for? You know, I've just ruined his image, but I love the man. I always will. And I love him just like my own father and mother. And it's, I'm so glad to be back in the Sacramento area just to be near him. And I'd like to pick his brains for another 10 or 15 years because he's got so much knowledge in there. I'd like to learn half as much as what he has.
You were talking about his image. His image is to be a rough guy, a slave driver type coach. Tell me, during 1968, what did he demand from you? What does he demand of his swimmers?
To try. Just not to go through the motions. You're there, you've made a decision to do something, to be a swimmer or to be a track person or, you know, to be Miss America or whatever, but to do it 100%, not just to go in and do it half-heartedly. I think any coach or any person that is a teacher or whatever asks their students or their proteges just to try, because what's the sense in doing it if you're not going to put in 100%?
You said he has a heart of gold, but boy, I'll bet once you get in that pool, it's all business, isn't it?
It certainly is. I can remember times when he would say, okay, we'll go back-to-back 3,000s or back-to-back 1650s. And he'd say, Mark's hoe, and I'd push off and underwater, and I'd just either scream or say, what's he think I am, a robot or a computer? Just put in the card and punch a button and I'll do what you say. And I would literally get mad at him underwater and swear at him this, that, and the other. But I knew he was doing it because it was right, and he was doing the best for me.
At the time when during the times when you got mad at him, did that serve somewhat as a motivational factor for you?
Certainly did. I worked harder than I ever when he'd do that, and I go, I'll show him, you know. And sometimes I'd be really stubborn and just do a lousy job and really not try, and then the next set I go, now that was really stupid. You just wasted 20 minutes in the water. The day's gone by, you can't make that up. But, and his heart of gold, I mean, you'd finish a race, and talk about psychology, you'd finish a race and you go, what are you doing, waiting for a train? I said, but Sherm, I just broke a world record. So what? You can go faster. I go, oh, I guess I'll have to wait till the next time and go faster. But
can't ever please him, can you?
You can't please him, but he's got a twinkle in his eye, and you can tell. And I'm telling all his secrets, and he's just going to die. But the guy is great. You didn't have to be a world record holder. You could be just a member of the club or someone that has crossed his path that he's grown, you know, fond of, and you need some help getting into school or trying to get a scholarship or a recommendation or something, and you say, Sherm, could you help me? He'd go out of his way and do it. And I know people that have summer jobs that he has helped with, and he's just done so much for the young people of Sacramento.
Debbie, you seem like a really nice person. I don't really want to put you on the spot, and I don't know if you call it putting you on the spot or anything else, but I'd like you, if you could, to tell us a story about why it took Sherm Chavoor so very long to get in the Sacramento Hall of Fame. I mean, he's considered one of the greatest swimming coaches of all time.
Well,
you can feel free to mention names if you'd like.
Okay, well, what had happened was I can't exactly remember the date that I was inducted in the Hall of Fame. I think it was 67 or it could have been 68 or 69. I'm not positive of the year. But I was inducted in before Mike Burton. Susie Peterson was inducted in before, I think, Mike Burton and Mark Spitz and all. And Sherm did not feel that was right. And after thinking about it and listening to him and reading articles, I didn't feel it was right either. Because I feel that Mike Burton was the first person really to put Sacramento on the map as far as swimming goes.
Did someone here in Sacramento have it in for Sherm, or they didn't like him, or what?
It's very possible. I know that a few people on the chamber, I guess, that were doing the Hall of Fame, just their personalities clashed with Sherm, as a lot of people's do. But they just... he boycotted the Hall of Fame for so many years. He didn't show up. I didn't show up to receive mine because I really believe that Mike deserved to be in before I did, because he grew up in Sacramento. I was a transplant from New Jersey, and he just has never gotten the recognition he deserved, especially from his hometown. And this is what started it all. And When they asked me last year to come to his banquet, and I happened to be coming through from, a public relations trip, I said, fine. And I was nervous up until the time that I saw him walk through the door, because I wasn't sure he was going to show up. Just because when he holds a grudge, he'll hold it. And he said, I don't care. I don't care what people think about me. I'm not going to change myself to please them. I'm going to enjoy life and do what I want to do. And I think every person has that right, and Sherm has done a lot of things, and I'm glad to see him in there, and maybe he's kind of mellowed in his old age or or something, I don't know, but